You are not what hurt you. The collective journey of healing. Have you ever noticed how we tend to wear our wounds like badges of honor? How we introduce ourselves by our traumas before our triumphs? Hi, I'm the person who survived that thing. I'm the one who made it through despite everything. I recently had the profound privilege of interviewing Laterina Washington, a visionary whose work in mental health advocacy has transformed how we understand healing in the Black community. Her brilliance isn't just in identifying problems, it's in illuminating pathways forward that honor both individual pain and collective possibility. Through her groundbreaking research and compassionate approach, she has created spaces where thousands can finally say, I am more than what happened to me. Her insights reveal something both simple and revolutionary. We are not what hurt us. Let that sink in for a moment. We are not what hurt us. This isn't just a catchy phrase, it's a fundamental truth that many of us, especially those who've spent years in survival mode, struggle to embrace. And today, I want to explore what happens when we finally separate our identity from our trauma, when we recognize that healing isn't just an individual act, but a collective movement. What Latarina helped me understand is that for too many of us, especially in the Black community, our wounds become our identity cards. We present them first almost as if to say, this is why I deserve to take up space in the world, as if our suffering somehow validates our existence. But what if we flip the script? What if, instead of being defined by what broke us, we were defined by how we chose to rebuild? The data tells a sobering story. According to research from the Child Mind Institute and Steve Fund, Black families face extraordinary barriers when seeking mental health support for their children. Stigma within homes, financial constraints, historical distrust of healthcare systems, and perhaps most damaging, the scarcity of providers who actually understand their lived experiences. 1,000 Black parents were surveyed about their children's emotional well being. 1,000 stories of concern, of wanting better, of seeking help in systems not designed for them. Let me bring this to life with a story that emerged from this research. A mother noticed her 14-year-old son withdrawing after witnessing police violence in their neighborhood. His grades dropped, his sleep suffered, but when she sought help, she encountered therapist after therapist who either minimized the racial trauma or suggested her parenting was the problem. 6 months and five different providers later, she finally found a Black male counselor who recognized the intersection of adolescent development, racial trauma, and masculine identity her son was navigating. The transformation wasn't instant. Healing rarely is, but it was profound. Within weeks, her son began opening up. By 3 months, he was sleeping better. And most importantly, he stopped believing something was inherently wrong with him for being affected by what he had witnessed. This wasn't just about finding the right therapeutic techniques. It was about finding someone who could see her son truly see him in the fullness of his experience. Because healing, as Laterina Washington so powerfully articulates, is not just an individual journey, it's a collective movement. This brings me to the second critical insight from my conversation with Laterina. Access to culturally responsive mental health support isn't just nice to have, it's essential. When we talk about mental health in America, we often frame it as a universal experience. But the truth is far more nuanced. A study from NYU's Silver School of Social Work analyzed data from over 1,500 young adults, focusing on how racial discrimination impacts mental health outcomes, among marginalized groups. What they found was chilling. Young adults of color experienced heightened rates of psychotic symptoms linked not only to personal trauma, but to persistent exposure to societal inequities like racism, a stressor often overlooked by traditional psychiatric models. Think about that. The very fabric of our society, the racism woven into our institutions, is literally triggering psychosis in young people of color. And yet, when these young people seek help, their symptoms are often misinterpreted, dismissed, or treated without any acknowledgement of their root causes. Consider the story of Jamal, a 19-year-old college student who began experiencing paranoia and hearing voices after being wrongfully detained by campus police. Three different psychiatrists diagnosed him with schizophrenia and prescribed antipsychotics that left him foggy and disconnected. It wasn't until he found a therapist specialized in racial trauma who recognized his symptoms as a trauma response, not a chemical imbalance, that he began to heal. This therapist didn't just treat Jamal's symptoms, she helped him contextualize his experience within the broader pattern of racial profiling. She connected him with a support group of other young men with similar experiences, and she advocated for policy changes at his university. Many respondents in the study had previously been misdiagnosed or dismissed simply because clinicians failed or were unable to contextualize their symptoms within broader social realities. This isn't just a failure of individual providers, it's a systemic failure, and it's costing lives. But there is hope in this story too. The research led some clinics serving predominantly BIPOC populations to retrain staff on implicit bias while launching group therapy programs centered around racialized stressors. New partnerships formed between academic institutions and grassroots organizations committed specifically to healing justice. Because when we understand that healing is collective, we begin to see that the solution must be collective too. Now, I want to pause here and acknowledge something important. This conversation can feel heavy. It should feel heavy. We're talking about deep wounds, both personal and societal. But remember what Laterina Washington taught us. You are not what hurt you. You are what you choose next. And that brings me to the third crucial insight from our conversation. Breaking stigma opens door for generational wellness. Let me tell you about another powerful example. Research shows that racial bias contributes significantly toward misdiagnosing mood disorders among Black boys, increasing risk factors while delaying proper intervention. As Dr. Jonathan Shepard puts it, when a person sees a Black man who's emotional, they see us as an angry being, not as someone needing support. This stereotype has devastating consequences. Consider the case documented in this research. A teenage boy showing signs of depression was repeatedly suspended rather than referred for counseling, solely because his distress was labeled defiance rather than pain. But here too, there's a story of transformation. In one school district, parents organized and demanded change. They shared stories of their sons being punished for behaviors that were clearly cries for help. They brought in experts who could educate teachers and administrators about how depression manifests differently across cultural contexts. The result? The district implemented mandatory anti bias training coupled with expanded school based counseling options. Suspensions dropped nearly 30% within a year. More importantly, dozens of boys received the support they actually needed instead of punishment they didn't deserve. These changes didn't happen by accident. They happened because parents and advocates broke the silence. They spoke openly about mental health struggles. They demanded better. They refused to let stigma dictate their children's futures. And this is where the personal and the political intersect. When we talk openly about our struggles and our healing, we create safe spaces that foster resilience and growth, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. Laterina Washington's work reminds us that destigmatizing mental health conversations within families and communities paves the way for future generations to seek help without shame or fear. When a mother tells her daughter, it's okay to not be okay, she's not just supporting her child, she's rewriting a cultural script that has silenced too many for too long. So, where do we go from here? How do we take these insights and transform them into action? First, we must recognize that healing requires community. None of us heal in isolation. Find your people, those who understand your journey, who can hold space for your pain without trying to fix it or minimize it. Second, if you're seeking professional support, prioritize finding providers who understand your lived experience. This doesn't necessarily mean they need to share your exact background, but they should demonstrate cultural humility and a willingness to learn about the context that shape your reality. Third, and perhaps most importantly, start breaking the stigma in your own circles. Have one open conversation this week with someone you trust about your own journey toward healing, or ask them genuinely about theirs. I want to leave you with this. We stand at a pivotal moment in history, a time when old systems are crumbling and new possibilities are emerging. The work of healing is not separate from the work of justice, they are intimately connected, two strands of the same revolution. When you choose to heal, when you refuse to be defined by what hurt you, you are not just changing your own life. You are disrupting patterns that have persisted for generations. You are creating ripples that extend far beyond what you can see. So I challenge you today, claim your story, all of it, the wounds and the wisdom, the pain and the power. But remember that your trauma is something that happened to you. It is not who you are. You are not what hurt you. You are what you choose next. And when we choose healing, not just for ourselves, but for each other, we don't just transform our own lives, we transform the world. Thank you.